Hello everyone and welcome to, I've got listed here on our first slide, Class 4, but I guess it really depends upon what order that you watch some of the topical presentations that we're making available on our website. This one in particular is on soils management for pastures and hay production. We're going to be discussing a few things today, and really this is kind of a brief overview. We're going to talk about establishment too, but hopefully this will be very helpful to you. And for those of you that may be watching this one for the first one, I'm Rick Maxwell, I'm the County Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources here in Collin County. On our first presentation that we titled Soils, I had this slide up, and it's a picture there of a hayfield, and simply states we want to get it in the ground and we want to keep it there. And I think that pretty much holds true for any type of crop that we put into the ground. We want to get it there and we want it to stay. So hopefully we'll be discussing some things that will help you in that regard as we go along. I think the first thing that a person needs to take a look at when any crop that you're planning on planting is the site selection. We need to develop an understanding of the potential of that particular site. We need to know what some possible limitations might be. I have a couple listed here, whether this is an upland site or whether it's a bottomland site. We need to know about our soil nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in particular. We've discussed these things during the soils presentation, but a soil survey is a really good thing to take a look at to know exactly on your site what it might be capable of producing there. So these are things that definitely come into play. We discussed in the pond section too. Site selection is very, very important. The same holds true for pasture establishment, pasture management. So when we're talking about site selection, we need to concentrate on those areas that might offer us the highest probability of return on our investment. Now today we're talking about pastures in particular, or hay meadows, but this holds true for any site selection for whatever crop you're trying to produce. We need to make sure that that site is suitable for whatever we're wanting to plant there. If we're talking about seeding a particular grass variety or sprigging Bermudagrass, we need to make sure that it's not too steep, that it will maintain moisture okay. Not a particular problem for us here. In certain areas, though, it is, that it's not too rocky. So we need to take all these things into consideration when we're selecting that particular site on our property that we're planning on planting some pasture grasses. The first thing we need to take a look at, and this is more in the realm of establishment, but we need to prepare a good seed bed. Now this is the things that it will help in regard to if you can do that. It increases your planting depth accuracy. We don't get too shallow or we don't get too deep if we have a good seed bed prepared. It reduces the competition from other grasses or broadleaf weeds that we don't want. It also allows for quicker germination of that seed that you're planting. It reduces the risk involved. It will also improve our water efficiency, and it improves your relationship with the person that, if it is a hay meadow situation, your custom hay baler. If you got a good prepared seed bed, that means that you've got it good, level, soft, and he can get over it with his equipment without any problems. Now, what are those characteristics of a good seed bed? Well, we need it to be level, if possible. We need it to be firm and not fluffy. If we get it too fluffy, well, then when we run our seeder over it, we may get that seed a little too deep. We need it to be relatively free of clods, and we need it to be weed-free if possible. So we need to take all these things into consideration when we're preparing that good seed bed. Now I've got a picture here, and this particular one, hope you can see it well, but it looks like it's a well-prepared seed bed. As you see there, it's level. It doesn't look too fluffy. Appears that there may have been some recent rains received, because we see some possible clods that were on the top that look like they're kind of melted down a little bit. So this would be what a good seed bed might look like. I'm going to talk now about planting methods for Bermudagrass, and for the most part here in North Texas, when we're looking at a pasture grass or grasses for a hay meadow, we think about Bermudagrass. It is an introduced grass that is not native to this area. There are two ways to plant this. by seeding those actual seeds, or by sprigging. Another method that we normally don't do here in Collin County, and for the most part in North Texas, is actually planting stolons or tops. Really, sprigging works better for us than in this area than does planting the stolons or tops. So we'll take a look at seeding, and then again it's in sprigging. As far as the seeded varieties go, we have two possibilities that you can get the seed, either hulled or unhulled, or you can get a combination. Actually, there's three, a combination of hulled and unhulled seed. If we're looking at hulled seed, we want to plant about 5 to 7 pounds of that seed per acre. If it's unhulled seed, it's 8 to 10 pounds per acre. We have a longer planting window with the seeded varieties as compared to the sprigged varieties. And discuss that a little bit, and what I mean by that is we can broadcast or put down this seed with a grass seeder of some sort, and that seed will lay there until ample soil moisture is obtained enough to start the germination process. The same doesn't hold true for sprigging, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. As far as the seeded varieties, I have a few listed here: common Bermudagrass, giant Bermuda, Wrangler, Cheyenne 2, and Cowboys. Again, these are all seeded Bermudagrass varieties. Each have their own good characteristics, I guess you'd say. Cheyenne 2 and Cowboy are two of the newer varieties that are out there. They have higher yield potential if you were looking at a seeded variety for haying purposes than does the common giant or the Wrangler. And there's also blends of these seeded varieties that you can purchase, and these are some of the blend names. Rancho Frio is a blend that contains common, giant, and Cheyenne. Texas Tough is another popular variety that is common and giant. Sungrazer 777, and also Sungrazer Plus. These contain different amounts of common, giant, and Wrangler, but all of these blends will work well in our clay soils here in North Texas, as well as these varieties, these seeded varieties that I have listed here. Again, it is mainly based upon what your intentions are for your property. If you're going to be grazing cattle, then the Cheyenne 2 or the Cowboy may be a better choice for you, or a blend that contains those. Also for hay, if you have horses, then common might be the best choice for you, because horses can bite that grass off right at the soil surface, and common has some characteristics that don't allow those horses to pull up all the plants. Now back to the sprigged varieties, and these are hybrid varieties. And the reason we have to put out the sprigs or the root systems is because these hybrid varieties are crosses and they don't produce viable seed. So we have to put the actual plants in the ground. In sprigging, we need to consider about 20 to 30 bushels per acre, and it depends upon the variety that you're wanting to plant and if you plant it with a sprigging machine. If not, and you're broadcasting those sprigs and then disking them in, then we need to increase that bushels per acre rate to 40 to 50 bushels per acre. Now, I have listed here some of the hybrid or sprig varieties. One that we're all pretty familiar with is Coastal. Coastal Bermudagrass is one that's been used widely here in most all of Texas. It's a variety that does very well here in all soil types, whether it's sandy loam, clay loam, or clay soils. It does very well. Tifton 44 is another hybrid variety that was developed several years ago in Tifton at the experiment station in Tifton, Georgia. We don't see a whole lot of this particular variety, but I will say this: it does very well on our tight clay soils here in North Texas. An improvement upon that variety that came out about 10 or 11 years ago is one called Tifton 85. This is a hybrid variety that has really high yield potential, is one that is very well preferred for hay situations. It produces a lot of hay, but it also works well in grazing situations. A couple other varieties I have listed here is Jigs and Russell, and these are two varieties that we don't see a lot here in North Texas. They primarily are better suited to areas south of here. We'll see more Jigs and Russells as we get down into central and southeast Texas. One of the reasons being is the cold tolerance is not quite as good on those two varieties as the three listed above that. But Coastal, Tifton 44, Tifton 85 are good hybrid varieties for Collin County or North Texas. Have here now a picture of an actual sprigging machine. We see there that the roots are being fed into the machine by the trailer that is attached behind the sprigging machine, and we see there that those actual sprigs or root systems are fed down through this machine, and it makes a little furrow, kind of packs over them a little bit after they drop the sprig itself, and this works very well if you're using the hybrid varieties. And here's another picture also of a sprigging machine. You can see the sprigs there in the back, and again, there's a conveyor in there that is actually moving those sprigs toward where they'll be dropped down to the soil surface. And again, you can't see it very well, but there's also a little cultipacker that's under there. It kind of helps also when you're sprigging. Another way to reduce the risk is to finish when we're through, or if you have a machine that already has one mounted on it, is cultipacking. That seems to be something that's very important, whether you're planting seeds or sprigs. If we can go over that with a cultipacker or a roller, it seems to really help those seeds to germinate, or those sprigs to really start growing. So it's a good idea to do that if at all possible. And here's a picture of a cultipacker. This is one that's pretty elaborate here. It has the teeth on it. You can use a roller also behind your tractor to get the same results from this, but it seems to really help if we can utilize a cultipacker or a roller after we put those seed out or put those sprigs down. Now, let's talk about the nutrients that are needed to grow that grass. The first one is nitrogen, or N. Have here listed on this slide some different forms that nitrogen comes in. The first one is ammonium nitrate, which is 3400. That means in a 50-pound bag of fertilizer, that 34% of that is actual ammonium nitrate. Another one is urea, which is 4600, and then urea ammonium nitrate in liquid form at 3200 or 2800. The last one listed there, anhydrous ammonia, is no longer available on the market, but it was 82% nitrogen, but it's not available. But nitrogen is very instrumental in plants growing. It's what gives them that boost, I guess you'd say, to start growing. So we need to know the levels of the nitrogen in our soil from that soil test to know exactly how much nitrogen we need to put down. As far as the application of nitrogen, if we're applying 100 pounds of actual N or less, then we can do that with one single application. But if we need more than 100 pounds, then we usually need to split those into 2 applications to get our nitrogen out. So take that into consideration. If your soil test calls for more than 100 pounds of actual N, we need to split that into 2 applications. Phosphorus, P2O5, the second crucial element that's needed in the soil to grow any type of pasture grass or hay grass. Again, we need to check that soil test to know exactly how much phosphorus we need to apply. What phosphorus does is it aids in developing the root system and the transfer of energy within the plant, and we get the maximum efficiency out of our nitrogen only if the phosphorus is there in the amounts that are needed, because this is again essential in the transfer of energy. So nitrogen is the energy for that plant, and if we don't have the necessary phosphorus there, then we won't get the results that we want. And then the third element is potassium. We want to apply the potassium also based upon our soil test. Potassium is very important also. It helps in avoiding winter kill, in disease resistance, and also in the transfer of water in the plants. So we need to have potassium also at the right levels to ensure that our plants are going to grow the way that we want them to. Again, potassium is K2O. The low potassium levels in the soil are often associated with those poor stands of Bermudagrass. One of the reasons being it's important also in disease resistance. So a lot of those fields that we see that aren't growing well may be because of a particular disease, because the potassium levels are not where they need to be. Now let's turn our attention to competition control or weed control. Remember, a weed is anything that's growing out there that we don't want. It might be a broadleaf or it might be another grass that's out there that we don't want. First thing we need to know is what are those weeds that are out there? What's our most troublesome competition for our newly established Bermuda grass? Once we determine that, then we need to choose the right herbicide to control that particular weed. We also need to match our equipment with our needs. And what I mean by that, if you have a small field, then you don't need a boom sprayer that's tremendous in size. We need to fit the equipment we need with the size of the property that we have. One other thing that's really crucial, and for those of you that have been through our pesticide applicator training classes, you know this, and that's calibrating your sprayer. We need to know that we're putting out the right amount of product out there to control those weeds. Not putting too much, not putting enough can be crucial. We need to also spray at the proper time. There are weeds that are early season weeds, we have mid-season weeds, and we have late season weeds. And those that are most troublesome to you, again, you need to determine what they are, and that will help us determine when we need to spray. If you have problems with mid-season weeds, for instance, something like silverleaf nightshade, then you might want to target somewhere between excuse me, you might want to target somewhere between mid-May to mid-June for that application. We need to spray at the proper time. But first and foremost, we need to read and follow the label instructions on that particular herbicide that we're going to be applying. Our plant survival is going to depend upon the synthesis and storage of food. That's those nutrients, providing those in the proper levels. That will help us to establish a healthy root system that will provide us with the opportunity for regrowth and for the production of reproductive organs within that plant. We need to pay close attention to this, and if we adhere to all of these different things, then our plants should survive, provided we receive adequate rainfall. I want to talk shortly here about some of the problems that we've incurred over the past few years here. We went through some really difficult drought years. Stocking rates are crucial. The intensity of grazing. If we have too many animals out there for the amount of grass that we have, we can kill out stands, and we don't have enough nutrients for the animals that we have out there. Two other things that come into play is the frequency of grazing and the duration of grazing. If we have that forage out there, we need to determine how much we do have, again looking at our stocking rates and whether it might be better to just turn those animals in there for short, frequent grazings rather than having them on there all the time. Selective grazing ability of the livestock or wildlife that we have there. Different classifications of livestock have different grazing behavior, and that comes into effect when we're trying to determine the intensity of our grazing. We want to look at those stocking rates. We look at 1,000 pounds of animal as being one animal grazing unit. Now, if we break that down, an adult cow, for instance, is going to weigh somewhere around 1,100 to 1,200 pounds on average. So that's a little bit over that 1,000-pound animal unit. So when we're looking at how many animals our property can sustain, we need to take that into consideration. If we're looking at, say, goats, there might be, depending upon the breed of goats that you have, you could possibly have 9 or 10 animals that will equal that 1,000-pound animal unit. So we need to determine our classification of livestock, exactly how many animals we can put out there to better utilize the pasture grasses that we have. So in summary, these are the things that we're most concerned with when we're trying to establish a pasture grass or a hay meadow grass. And that's, first of all, site selection. We need to pay close attention, again, to the nutrient management. We need to get those soil tests done to determine how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium we need to put out to give that grass the best chance of growing there on your site that you've selected. If we're establishing also, we need to take into consideration proper seedbed preparation and planting. Again, competition control is crucial with Bermuda grasses, so we need to also take that into consideration, and also our livestock stocking rates. We don't want to put out more animals than what we have grass for. So these are the things that we need to be very aware of. I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope it's been helpful to you. Again, want to offer to you. If you have any further questions concerning pasture management or establishment, I know I've primarily covered Bermuda grasses here. A lot of these same things hold true if you're a proponent of native grasses, but I welcome your calls or your emails. So give us a call at the Extension office if you have further questions, again, on pasture management or establishment. Thank you.